right, well, welcome everyone to a very special class with Joe from Siser. We are doing a dual broadcast today, so you can either tune in on Zoom or if you want to, we are also streaming live on our Facebook page. So feel free to tune in wherever you would like. And without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to Joe.
All right. Thank you so much, Stacy and Bianca. I appreciate you all for joining me today for a very special Zoom class because, as Stacy mentioned, this is also streaming simulcast on Facebook right now. So hello from everybody from who is on Zoom and at Facebook. Please let me know where you're watching from. So right in the chat here on the Zoom class, say hi, where you're watching from. Make sure it's clicked to all participants. And we got a big class today. So what we're going to be talking about is the creation of a customized float frame. And that's what we're going to be doing in this class today. So before we begin, I am Joe with Siser North America. Thank you so much for watching. And my first lesson always, for those that usually follow any classes I've done in the past, the first lesson is how to properly pronounce Siser. So say it with me, Siser. That's right, you did it, congratulations. Tell your friends, let us know that is not Siser, 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 all the other versions. So if you haven't seen anything from us, Michaels carries an array of Siser products in their stores, and that is what we're going to be using. In case you have never seen or heard of any of our products, we manufacture heat transfer vinyls, products such as Easy Weed, Glitter, Holographic, you may have seen those, all the way to our EasyPSV line, which is our pressure sensitive or decal vinyl line, which is actually what I'm going to use in this lesson today. So yeah, we are officially in February right now. So obviously you guys can see the theme of what we're going to be talking about today. Of course, I don't know, some people might be a little bit more uncomfortable about Valentine's Day. I don't know, in case you have a loved one, in case you don't. It doesn't matter these days, right? It just gives us another reason to craft. And that's what we're going to do today. And again, making a customized float frame can go all the way around for any kind of theme, any kind of occasion. So what I did and what we're going to be showing, and I'm going to show you real fast. I already have a sample made. So again, this is a custom float frame used all with EasyPSV that you see here and a simple photo that I printed out on a color paper printer. So what I'm using is this 8x10 float frame. And again, in case you don't know what a float frame is, it's just basically any kind of picture, there you go, picture frame with glass or plastic, as long as you see it see-through. So this is the exact frame that I used here, a different color edge to it. So they have at Michaels an option in black, white, and a gray option. So it all depends on what you're going for. But again, you want it to be transparent. So that is what is going to make it look like the image is actually floating. So before we begin, do we have any questions? Again, along the way, anyone has questions, please feel free to chime in. I want to make sure any questions are answered. So before we get to the application, all I'm going to do is take the frame or the actual plastic out of the frame. So with this frame, this is plastic and not glass, which is completely acceptable for this kind of project. Now, when you set up your design with your EasyPSV, so what I'm going to be using today are two different colors of EasyPSV. So I have the Holly Berry Permanent EasyPSV and our White Cloud Permanent EasyPSV. Now, you might be asking what makes it permanent, or how can I tell if it's permanent? A good way to tell with the Siser EasyPSV is looking on the back of the EasyPSV. So with a permanent, we have the charcoal grid lines that you can see on the back. So that is an indicator that it is a permanent. If you want to use a removable, it will have more of a mint grid line on the back. So that is one thing to look for. Another thing is the finish. So what I'm using today, again, is the permanent. It does naturally have a glossy finish. But what's awesome and what is exclusive to Michael's stores is our permanent EasyPSV is also offered in a matte finish. So in case you didn't want that glossy finish that you see here, you can get the permanent in a matte finish. So these are the two colors I'm using today. Again, this image of me and my dog, that's right, this is what this was made for. This is my dog, Jack. Or no, I pointed myself. My dog, Jack. This was printed on a color copy paper, or on copy paper on a color printer. And that's all you need, as well as double-sided tape. So I'm going to use this double-sided tape to adhere this to the float frame, and that's it. So to prep for this, in case you are using a frame that might not be brand new, like this one is right out of the packaging, you want to make sure that your surface area is clean. So in case it might be a little scuffed up or might have some dust or debris on it, you can use simple Windex or any kind of alcohol to clean it off. After applying that, though, you do want to wait about 10 to 20 minutes after you do that before you put the application on there. So with your EasyPSV, when you send this to your vinyl cutter, you want to make sure you do some test cuts, because if you are familiar with the Siser heat transfer vinyl, it is different. With EasyPSV, you aren't going to mirror your image. It's also very important to make sure that you dial in your cut correctly. So for those that may or may not know where to begin with the EasyPSV on your vinyl cutter, a helpful tool that you can get right on your phone is the Siser Heat Transfer Vinyl app. So all you got to do is go to your app store, look up Siser HTV. This is what the app looks like. When you open it up, it's going to have a menu over on the side here. And all you have to do, even if you're using heat transfer vinyl or EasyPSV, we have instructions right there. So if you look at EasyPSV permanent, right there you can see, hopefully you can see it, some recommended cut settings for various vinyl cutters. So this is a very, very helpful tool if you are uncertain to where you need to get your vinyl cutter dialed in at. Now, I want you to remember, though, that these are just settings that we have kind of as a jump off. So it is very important to make sure that you still do your test cuts. So with EasyPSV, it does have a paper backing. So you want to make sure you don't cut too deep into the paper backing so you don't have a problem masking it. So do some test cuts, do the weeding away, make sure that it isn't cutting too deep into the paper backing, and you should be good to go. Also, what I have next to me is the Siser application tape. So this application tape, what's great about it is it does have the gridded cover to it. So it is a gridded masking tape, which does help line up your image. If you are going on anything that might be like what we're doing today and you want to make sure that's lined up correctly, it is also a medium tack. So it isn't overly abrasive on surfaces. You can use it on all sorts of different things, as well as it being very, very versatile on the entire Siser EasyPSV line. So you don't need to get different kind of application tapes when you're using it. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah. So,
perfect.
one of the attendees would like to know, how much can we resell it for?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. How much would you suggest that we can resell it for?
It's up to you. Well, we don't really deal with like the cost of it. Are you talking the finished good or the actual product itself?
Yeah, the finished good, yeah.
Oh, the finished good. So really, if you're looking to turn around and sell this, it would really be depending on what your cost of materials are. So that's just something that you're going to want to consider. How much does the frame cost you? How much material are you actually utilizing for that project? And again, how long did it take you to set up that artwork if you had to do it? These are factors that you'll have to kind of put into account when you are figuring out a bottom line if you're doing it for a business. which is totally understandable. Or if you're doing it for fun, it is another thing to consider as well. That is a good question. Anything else?
No, on the Facebook side, so we have a lot of people that are tuning in. We've got Jennifer and Sherry and Dorothy and Heather. Oh, Heather has a question. Is there vinyl that's good for the outdoors?
Yes. So the permanent vinyl would be great for the outdoors too, but it is very subjective on what the outdoors is for you, right? We're here in Michigan. It can get below 0 out here, so there might be a tendency over time that you might see it cracking eventually. Or if you're in the South and you're getting direct sunlight in high UV, that might have a little bit of an effect on it. But overall, the life of the EasyPSV permanent is about 3 to 5 years. I've done personal projects on a ton of stuff, and I haven't had any kind of issues. Again, we have actually 4 seasons up here, but I feel like half the year it's winter. So if it goes through the cold like that, I think it can withstand a good amount of things. But that's a great question as well. So for this project, like I said, easy to do. Now, what's really cool, and I'm not a Spotify user, but I've seen this project around, and you guys can look into it. But you can, if you are a Spotify user, you can create an actual code that's native to a song. So if you do something like what I'm going to show you today for a loved one or someone that you care about, and you actually want to put a song on there, because here this was created, it just says Joe and Jack, the best of friends. Very kind, very something sentimental for me. But if you want to do something that has an actual song and you want to create a Spotify code, you can do that, which is really cool because you can scan it with your phone and it'll pop up right onto your Spotify. It's really cool. And you can cut that out of vinyl. But this was just designed with the simple title and a little bit of a rewind or fast forward button on it. So it's very, very basic on the setup. Again, you guys can do whatever you want on the designing end of it. I'm just going to show you this project really fast, and then you guys can take it from there. Now, there's a couple different ways of how you can approach this. On the one I already did, I actually did the holly berry color on the very outside of the float frame. So if you ran your finger on it, you can actually feel the EasyPSV. And then on the inside, I put the image on the inside as well as the white cloud EasyPSV. I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. So just to show you that there's multiple ways of attacking this. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my mask to my holly berry transfer. Okay. All right, so make sure you're on a good flat surface. And then what you're going to do is just cut some of the application tape a little bit larger than your image. Okay. Now you can either take this the way I'm going to do it and start in the center and roll out, or you can lay the application tape on the table with the adhesive side facing up and lay the transfer on it. It's entirely up to you on how you want to mask this. So I like to start in the center and kind of roll my way out. A little bit of lifting on that. All right. Okay, then you're going to take a squeegee. And here's where I like to kind of flip it to the other side. And then you're going to create a bond. Here's where it's very important to make sure that your cut is good, because if you cut too deep into the paper backing, when you peel your paper backing off, you'll see the paper come up if it's cut too deep. As you can tell with that peel, our cut, yep, as you can see kind of at the bottom, it was a little too deep, but that's all right, because you can still work around that. So as you can see, maybe on this paper backing, you can see where that paper is sticking up. That might be because that's where the blade cut a little too deep, so we could dial it back just a little bit. And then if you get a little paper backing on the adhesive side, all you need to do is just kind of peel it off. It's not ruined. So what we're going to do for this, I got to try to think of like how the best way to attack this. We're going to do the back. I should have peeled these stickers off. All right, we'll keep these stickers on because this is going to take forever to come off. But make sure you clean that up, which you can use with any kind of like Goo Gone. Again, this is on the back of it, but what we'll do is we'll set our image on the back. So I'm going to start with the picture first. So what I'm going to do are use these double-sided adhesive squares. And we're going to just simply tack it onto the back of the paper. Again, if you have actual like a photo, you want to also make sure you measure that out if you're cutting around it with adhesive vinyl. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to try and cover that up. I'm going to lay that down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place the EasyPSV directly over my image. I hope this works out. I hope it doesn't lift anything. Once that's down, you want to squeegee that, create the bond. And kind of roll the adhesive or roll the mask against itself. Now, if you plan to reuse the mask, I would say you have about one more use to it because every time that adhesive gets touched, it does kind of contaminate it. So it might not be as sticky for your next transfer, but you can reuse it if you want to. Just make sure it goes back down onto the paper backing. And then I have my last layer that I'm going to put right underneath it.
Hey, Joe, we have some questions while you're doing that.
Absolutely.
So Paul asked, why use different color grids on the back for iron-on versus non-iron-on? Why not just identify the product with iron-on?
Oh, so that's a great question. So the EasyPSV, when you find it in Michael's, looks absolutely different than our heat transfer vinyl. So this is an example that I have right here in these bags. These are examples of our heat transfer vinyl. When you go to Michael's, this is what you get to see when you get our heat transfer vinyl. So if you see, hopefully you can see that, HTV means heat transfer vinyl. So it's essentially what you're saying iron-on, but that's what we call it. So when you get it in a roll like this. That is our heat transfer vinyl. That's how you can tell the difference. Now, when you get our EasyPSV, as of right now, it comes in sheets only, but you can get them in packs that look similar to this. Now, this is an example of just the application tape, but you can see this is how it'll be laid out, and it will say pressure-sensitive vinyl. So that's what the PSV that we say when we say EasyPSV. So you will be able to tell the difference. I hope that answers the question.
That's perfect. Thanks, Joe.
No problem. Okay, so that was it. I mean, really, that's it. So I just put, like I said, I put this a little bit different than the first one I did. I laid my image down first with the double-sided tape. So it's on the back, actually covering that, thankfully. Laid that on top, and then I put my EasyPSV around it. So this is another thing. When you do your art setup, make sure you give yourself a little bit of a margin if you did something like this. So I have a little wiggle room to line up my transfer on top of my picture. And then at the bottom, I know it might be hard to see because it's white, but yes, that's all it is. Again, you could come up with something more clever, something, again, that Spotify code that has something unique to you and your loved one or someone that you care about. So this is just a quick project to show you. So what I'm going to do is just place the other piece of plastic on top of this frame and then lay it back into the picture frame. And then once that's down, you can place these little metal tabs. All right. And there you go. What do you guys think? We switching? Cool? Yeah? All right. Check it out. I'll stand side by side just to get a good look at the difference in the frames, kind of the difference in, maybe you'll be able to see it, but as you can tell, you can't really tell. So you could take either one of these routes with, again, the EasyPSV being on the front where you can actually feel it, or actually have it in between both of those panes. So that way it's actually flush and you can't feel it on the outside of the window pane itself, or the picture frame itself. So what does everyone think? Cool. This was the project for today. Any questions?
Yeah, we have some. Oh, sorry, Bianca, do you want to take some?
Sure. So Dee wants to know, do we need a special tool to cut the PSV?
Just a vinyl cutter. So at Michael's, you can get the Cricut cutter or the silhouette cutter. So if you're familiar with those, either one of those vinyl cutters will work. If you are, and most people are craftier than me, I've seen people use simply a pair of scissors to do an image like a heart. You can absolutely use a pair of scissors. You can use it for basic text. I'd love to see how you do that. I've had people use a straight razor. Be careful with that. But the most concise, most accurate way of cutting any of our products here at Siser would be with a vinyl cutter.
Awesome. And then Jessica asked, for EasyPSV, what does PSV stand for?
Great question. So EasyPSV stands for, well, the PSV stands for pressure sensitive vinyl. So that's what I used today in this class. So the two colors I used today was the Holly Berry and the White Cloud permanent EasyPSV. So pressure sensitive vinyl means that all it is basically a sticker. So you don't need to apply any kind of heat to it. Now, again, with our other line, which is our HTV, when we refer to it, means heat transfer vinyl. So most of you probably know it as iron-on, but in case you want to learn another thing today, HTV, heat transfer vinyl, that's where you would actually cut it and heat apply it onto a textile.
Awesome, thanks. Other than that, that was the last question.
Okay. Well, perfect. Again, this is going to be on a replay too. So if you're watching later, you can always leave questions for us. We definitely want to make sure we answer anything that you have regarding anything with Siser or any of the Michaels products you see before you. You can definitely go to Michaels and check that out. Everything I used today, again, is available at Michaels. We have so much in store there, as well as their online store. We actually have sometimes more things on their online store than you might see in the store from Siser. So definitely check that out if you are interested in more for that. But yeah, any last minute questions?
No, Robin says she loved the presentation. We got lots of love on Facebook, lots of people saying they love the picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in case you guys want to see a lesson in heat transfer vinyl, so the HTV, I will be doing this garment you see here next week, February 12th, again, in another Zoom class for Michaels. So make sure you go and sign up for that next week. And we will see you there. Thank you so much to Michaels for having me on again. I'm Joe with Siser. We are here to help you with any of your Siser questions. Feel free to reach out to us. We're all over social media, so make sure you find our pages on Facebook, Siser North America, Instagram, Siser North America. Again, the app is a huge help. We're here to help answer any questions and hopefully inspire you for your next craft project. So thank you all so much for watching.